Presenting data, we'll look at a frequency table, frequency histogram, both with percentages, stem and leaf plot, and a dot plot. I strongly recommend not actually writing this down. I'm taking most of this from the example in the textbook. I really just want to make sure that you have a resource so that you know what I need for this. So a frequency table and a frequency histogram and a stem and leaf plot are all only used for numerical data. A dot plot can be used for either. And a frequency histogram, no, okay, fine, sorry. You can use a frequency table for either. Numerical is a frequency histogram or a stem and leaf plot. A frequency histogram, if you wanted one of these for categorical data, then you'd make a column graph. The light in here is really dodgy, sorry, I'll try to fix that. And focus. So this is numerical data. 20 people were surveyed on the number of times they checked social media that week. Some of them have a problem. Now, obviously you can see this is quite spread out. We wouldn't list all the possible scores from 2 up to 40 down in this table. It would get very large. We put these in groups. Usually aiming for about sort of 5 groups of data makes sense. So in this case, we've got from close to 0 up to 40. Groups of 10 makes sense. If the data was more compressed, we might do groups of intervals of 5. If it was up to, say, 100, we might do class intervals of 20. So it's based on, look, have between 5 and 10 groups or classes of data. So this is our class interval. And since we're going with tens, we're going from 0 up to, now we don't say 0 up to 10 because then we'd start this one with 10 and we say, well, where do I put this score of 10? So what this means just by leaving a dash and a blank is 0 up to less than 10, 10 up to less than 20, 20 to less than 30. You could write, if you wanted to, 0 up to less than 10, but we don't need to, so let's not bother. And we need to go all the way up to 40. Oh, did I get an extra line here somewhere? 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. 40 to 50. Yep. Sorry, extra line, so let's make this one our total line. Now we put the frequency next. And we used to have a tally, but we really don't need it now. We just look through, and you can put one in if you want. So look through, what scores have I got from 0 up to less than 10? 5 and 2, so it's 2 scores. From 10 up to less than 20, I've got 8 scores. And adding up the frequency gives me the number of scores I've got, so 20 people were surveyed. We might also have to use percentage frequency. And that is just the frequency out of the total represented as a percentage by multiplying by 100. So of course 2 out of 20 is 10%. 8 out of 20 is 40%. You could use your calculator, of course, if you need it. You don't need to show any working because it's a table. 4 out of 20 is 20%, and 1 is 5, and that would, of course, add up to a total of 100%. So this is a frequency table with a percentage frequency column. Now to put this into a histogram, and again, because we've got frequency and percentage frequency, we've actually got a 2-sided histogram. This will be our frequency, this will be our percentage frequency. Your score, which is the actual numbers that your people gave you as an answer. So the range of our score goes down the bottom, and that's why this comes in handy, because those numbers go on the outside of each column. For a histogram, your columns are 2 spaces wide, and you leave a half space on either end, and this column will go from 0 to 10, and we just write 0 and 10 on the outsides, and then 20. So this makes it quite clear that all the scores between 40 and 50 are going to be in this column here. Now this is not a column graph, it's a frequency histogram. It's used for numerical data. If we had categorical data and we wanted to put it in a column graph, then there would be a gap between our columns. Here is an example column graph. Your score wasn't given a number, it was poor, low, medium, good, excellent, so it's categorical, and you can see it looks very similar, but we've got a gap between the columns. We still have frequency, but for a frequency histogram for numerical data, no gap. Our frequency could be anything up to 8, so that's, we put in our little gradations. 1. Put in your numbers. Now your percentage frequency also needs the gradations, and it doesn't go up to 100, because the highest percentage frequency I can get is 40, and that has to align with the 8. And 4 has to align with 20%. So you link your percentage frequency with the appropriate score over here. Now obviously half of 40% is 20, so we might put our 10% halfway there and our 30, and that's quite sufficient. You could label them all if you want. So don't get tricked and put this all the way up to 100. The percentage frequency and the frequency both have to work for the same thing, and you'll see what happens as I put in my first column. From 0 to 10, the frequency is 2. Put in your column with a ruler, and you'll see that that equates to a 10% frequency, which is correct. So you're getting this set up. Really quickly completing this. Frequency of 8, frequency of 5, 4, and 1. Please do use a ruler on grid paper. You must label frequency, percentage frequency. You can get away with labeling this score or number of times, and you must give it a title that comes from the question, number of times you checked social media this week. Move to a colour you can read. So that is a frequency histogram. Make sure you give it those aspects. Ruler, scales, split up the score like that, give it a title, all that sort of stuff. With the same data, we should be able to do a stem and leaf plot, and I'll use different data for a dot plot. So again, a stem and leaf plot only works for numerical data. You'll remember this from previous years. Your numbers are split into tens and units, or indeed into the final digit and all the other digits. This doesn't always work for data if it's very closely grouped or very spread out, but this sort of data is quite ideal because it's somewhat spread out, but we don't have scores all the way from, say, 0.001 up to 1,000. If it was that spread out, you wouldn't be able to manage a stem and leaf plot. It just wouldn't work. So our stems are going to be our tens column, and our leaf will be the units column. So we do have some numbers where there's a 0 in the tens column, and we go up to numbers with a 4 in the tens column. Now you put each of your numbers, so here is this 21. It's got a 2 in the tens column and a 1 in the units, so a 1 there indicates 21. The leaf, I forgot the F, does need to be in order. I'd usually do one just with the leaf unordered, just getting all the numbers in, and then put it in order. It's up to you if you do that or not. So 19 is a 1 and a 9, 5, 10, so see these aren't in order, 15, 18, 31, 40, oops, 11, 28, 31, 16, 29, 2, running out of space. So I had 13, so it's a 1 and a 3, 33, 14, and 24. So you see all these numbers end up out of order, and actually what you get is pretty much the same graph as we just did. There's 2 things here, 8 things here, 5 things here. It's just here we also retain the digits themselves. So this is an unordered stem and leaf plot. You must give me an ordered stem and leaf plot. You draw another copy, label it again, stem and leaf, still get your digits for the tens column, and then you have to put these in order from smallest to largest. So this reads 2, 5, 10, 11. We don't put commas in because there's only ever going to be a single digit of the number out here. So what have we got? 10, 11. You've got to be quite careful at this point. No 2s. I've got a 3, 4. You might want to start marking these off. 5, 6, 8, and 9. 1, 1, 2, 3, and 0. You must include a key with your stem and leaf plot. Do not pick 2 numbers the same, but let's say 3, 4. That would read as 34. Just to let people know, these could be small numbers. This could be 4.0, 3.1, and you'd reflect that in your key. So a stem and leaf plot has to have the leaf in order and have a key. Dot plot, again, this can be categorical or numerical. You put your different options for the scores. So this is the number of cars people have at home. This would then form a number line where I need to go from 0 up to 4. We label it number of cars. And you put a dot or a cross for each one. So this one gets a cross here. Make sure they go on a grid line. So that's that 2. And here's this 3, and you go 1 line up. So you see it makes quite a nice column graph that doesn't need a scale. Where was I up to? That 2, 4, 2, 2. If this was categorical data, for example, type of car, Toyota, Forester, Subaru, whatever, you'd put your categories down here instead of your scores.